Yeah. Hi everybody. Thanks for turning up today. I make a little note. The the venue in Richmond it's closed its doors over the summer, which was rather a surprise. Because they didn't inform me about this. So as I was setting up the talk for today and going forward, it's put me a bit of a quandary what to do. I'm still looking for another venue, and I think what we'll need to do is just have a consult everybody in the group as to the way forward, because it may mean having to change the date and time of the meetings. I don't know yet. I may involve maybe moving out of Richmond. Again, I'm not sure, but there's various options to consider, which I'm still investigating that. So today I thought it's safer just to go with a purely virtual Zoom talk. So here we are. Well, thanks for turning up today. Okay, so today we've got Robert Lomax. Robert is he's a practice speaker. He's on a speaker circuit. He's also a writer and an artist. And I don't know much about Robert's background, so that's why I'd like him to do the longer talk if possible. But it's I believe he's had sort of psychic experiences going way back through his life, and I think there was a tragic incident in his life which sort of brought these experiences to the fore more. And over the last 30 years, he's been writing and painting and working and channeling with what I understand are two entities, which we'll talk about. And he seems to be more on a mission to publicize his work, and I just thought it just would be a good fit for the interests of the group today. So, okay, I won't burble on anymore, and I'll hand over to Robert. And thanks, Robert. Over to you.
Thank you for that introduction, Nick. Pleased to be here. Does anyone here believe in communication with benevolent aliens? We've got one person nodding their head, so that's a good start there. The Andromedans have some outreach programs, and they're in touch with lots of different people. And I suppose the most famous of which is Alex Collier, who's a contactee, and they want to talk about different ways of being, and they wish to share their understanding of the nature of mind and the universe. So I'll give a brief introduction to their perspective, followed by a Q&A session. So you can see this. Here's Antemedi, he is Andromedan, and this is Orlacka, and she is Arcturian. The band you see around her skull is just an energetic band. It's nothing more than that. But how it all started. As a child, I used to see very strange beings at the end of my bed, and it made me quite afraid. And if we go back to Orlacka, then you can probably understand why I was a bit perturbed. And I spoke to my father about it. He was really quite upset and thought perhaps I was becoming psychotic, and said, well, just tell them to go away. So I did, and they did. They went away. I've had several other sort of psychic things that were happening in my teens. On one occasion, I was water skiing, had a boat with an engine cocked up at the back, waiting to turn right down a hill, and I saw 4 pints of beer floating in front of me and heard a revving engine. And I knew instantly the person behind me was drunk, and this was about 11 o'clock in the morning. So headed down the hill towards a roundabout, and automatically I kind of just turned to the left and bumped onto the path. And shortly afterwards, there was a screech of brakes and a bang, and this Mini Cooper had hit the car that I would have been parked behind. So I'm pretty sure that that engine would have gone straight through his windscreen. And so these things all happen, don't they? And you think, oh, it's one of those things, a bit of intuition, and you let it go. And it wasn't really until a midlife crisis, when one of my sons drowned at the age of 9 months, that my world sort of turned upside down. And I think everybody has suffered bereavement at some stage, and they know that bereavement can be really quite difficult at times and very, very challenging. And it certainly was for me. But shortly afterwards, I had various things happening to me. I had showers of light and golden light over me. Portals began to open up, and I began to hear and see things. And so it's a little bit chaotic, but gradually I began to be aware of things in a different way. I began to realize that I was feeling one feeling through another feeling. So, for example, fear of sadness. And we can all fear sadness coming towards us. But once we're in the sadness, it's just incredibly sad. It's not fearful because you're in it. So I began to have these awarenesses, and these were part of what I would have called my spirit guides telling me things. So I was helped on that journey by a lovely psychic lady who I found my way to. But basically, Antemedi was with me from the beginning, perhaps in different guises. And it was like an intensive counseling sessions. Often I would ask a question and he would say, interesting, but we want to look at the reasons why you've asked that question in the first place. They would go into duality and its rigors. Duality, as you know, is something like, I want to feel better. I'd like to feel better than I am. But in order to feel better than you are, you have to be in a position where you need to be better. So they were dealing with this and saying, well, you need to let go of the ideas about wanting to feel better or wanting to feel different. So it was about changing the state of being rather than moving from one state to another to create a cycle or an escape. And through that process, I'd learned quite a bit. I was then encouraged to go to a charity called Crew's Bereavement Care. And I worked for them for 20 years as a counsellor and as a supervisor of counsellors. But in the end, I had to stop. I had to supervise myself and say I wasn't working in accordance with the ethos. Because on one occasion I was with this elderly lady. I was asked to go to her home because she was a little bit of an invalid. Anyway, when I was talking with her, her husband came in and said, can you tell her I'm here? And I said, well, no, that's not how counselling works. I'm reflecting back and talking about feelings. And he said, you know how these things work on higher dimensional levels. He says, I know what she wants. She wants to know I'm okay. So I said to the lady, do you mind if I say what I sometimes see? I sometimes get images, and are you okay with that? And so very gently I got into it and got to the point where I said that I see an image of a man standing on some step ladders mending gutters. And she said, that's my husband. I asked him to mend the gutters, and that's when he had his heart attack. And of course, she burst out crying. So little by little, and then he said, tell her the hand mirror that she broke this morning, I find funny, and the gold watch she's looking for has fallen behind the chest of drawers. And this lady, who was supposed to be an invalid, got up like a gazelle and went to her room, came back 5 minutes later with this broken hand mirror and this gold watch that she needed to sell for money. We talked a bit further at length, and I said, would you like me to come again? And she said, no, I just wanted to know he was okay. So I had to leave, and my life then took a slightly different direction. About 15 years ago, Antemedi said, don't you find my name unusual? You know, and he explained that he was not of this earth and that I'm not entirely of it either, because we are the same soul, and his consciousness is in part projected into mine. And in fact, there's a bigger explanation of soul, that we are multidimensional, having many other experiences at the same time. Anyway, he said, I've got a tourist, an Andromedan tourist, who would like to speak to you because we've spoken at another level. And so she kind of tuned into my soul vibrational code, if you call it that. And I was able to see her in this unusual room with unusual equipment. And we just got talking. And I said to her, can you hear my music in the background? And she said, yes, it's very, very unusual. As a species, you move between your emotional states. And she said we would call these the pain-pleasure cycles. So I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And she said, well, when you play sad music, it makes you sad. You know, you don't have to be sad when you play sad music. It's a choice of your state of being. But you see escape from pain. So in your sadness, in your pain, when you're not in pain, when you escape that pain, you see it as happiness, whereas actually it's just escaping pain. Happiness and bliss is a state that's something different. And she went on to explain that these are our duality, pleasure cycles, as she called them, that we hold on to pain in order that we can escape it, because escaping pain is a good idea. But what we have to do is we let go of the idea of escaping pain. Then we don't have to hold on to pain at all. So these are the kind of Buddhist ways that Antemedi was teaching. They're very similar to Buddhist ways. Anyway, at the end of it, she said, would you like to hear our music? Because it's based upon the vibrations of constellations and planets. So I said, yes. She played it to me, but obviously I'm not of sufficient vibration. I couldn't hear it. You have to excuse me looking away because I'm just looking at some notes. Okay. So the next few years, I was introduced to other aliens with different outlooks. Antemedi unfolded our past lives off Earth and deeper connections to the multi-dimensional soul. Communication became kind of free-flowing. I had a thought or a question and he would be there. And so the consciousness connections became mostly free-flowing. The communication was helped by a loss of self, or the sense of self, and a detachment from Robert. And it enabled me to accept that a part of Antemedi's consciousness is projected into me and that we are the same soul. As humans, we look through self and superimpose the perspective of self on soul when we're looking at soul. But soul is self, and it's also non-self. It's an intrinsic part of a vast program that contains not only the past and the future, but paradox, origin, and the sum of all. It's an infinite universal feedback system that these higher dimensional beings call Tukula. So no, gone back. That's it. So the nature of mind is interlinked with soul and universe. They're part of the same system. Today, we'll be talking about different ways of thinking, and the how and why we think what we do is also part of the system. But we need to think that with these three basic parts that will help us, that we are origin, experience, and the sum of all. Our present perspective is just one of many experiences we're having in the moment of now. To see our mind and soul beyond what we are now, we need to have an overlay of the system of us. And we'll be able to see that we are a feedback system when we do that. We are the universe, but when we look to origin, we cannot experience it through current self, because current self never existed at origin. There is, of course, a lot more to the Andromedan explanations than I'm giving here, and they are available in these free ebooks. In order to understand us, we have to understand origin. Origin is nothingness. It's all possibility and no possibility. These are the intrinsic nature of nothingness. And it's a paradox. And I've shown that with a plus and a minus, but it didn't exist. In order for there to be all possibility, it has to exist in nothingness. Otherwise, it couldn't exist. Now, and it's a strange concept. And in the books, they do talk about it deeper, because I said, how can something come from nothing? And this is one of the explanations. Within nothingness, a double negative paradox formed a mutation. It was now something and nothing. But the byproduct of this mutation in nothingness was a single burst of energy. That burst of energy flowed back to the original mutation, remembering that the mutation is something and nothing. It's existing and not existing. Because I say it was a paradox, it returned to the original mutation. This changed the original mutation into grow. And because it was now an infinity loop, it changed the energy, and the energy became grow energy. Grow became Moha awareness, and grow energy became creator energy. We need to be careful when we're thinking about awareness, and this is Antemedi's explanation of awareness. Awareness is embryonic, primitive, and elemental. A state of, I can't read the words because my pictures are all at the side there. A state of being and without end. It's unqualified and unlimited. Awareness can exist without consciousness. It's like a deep sleep. It's without action, and it's the totality of calmness while being openness without end. It's very different to consciousness. Consciousness requires touch and interaction, a reflection of something, often in a state of duality. It cannot exist without awareness, and it relates to content and context. It's something, it can be changing, and it's integral. This description allows us to see awareness is not attached to our sense of self. So Moha awareness and creator energy grew exponentially without any limits. No good or bad. All was possible, though not all was probable. And the symbiosis became so full and the energy so great that in order to grow more, which was prime awareness, the next form of grow became experience. So I've shown this as creator energy interacting with Moha awareness, just growing exponentially. The Andromedans refer to the expression. So in order to experience, which was another form of grow, there needed to be an expression. So creator energy burst through Moha awareness and created source energy from creator energy and arcana programs and information fields. The Andromedans refer to this as the shining blackness. And we have to remember that everything is happening in bursts of existing and not existing. See if I've got the right tab up. The shining blackness has nothing to do with negativity or evil. It's an extraordinary place where all possibility exists. I've been taken to the outer edges of it, and it's quite hard to describe. Like origin, it is something and nothing. It feels like everything all at once and not at all. The shining blackness is source energy and possibility programs. So in some ways, it's similar to what our scientists have proposed. The soul of the universe formed from an expression from the shining blackness, so the soul of the universe. But it did not exist as a self. It then became many expressions of non-self, soul, prior to superdivision. Separation and forgetfulness programs allowed the wider experience of separate self. We here today understand the universe has many dimensions, energetic holograms that act in such a way that they appear solid. Some refer to these as vibrations, but the Andromedans are very clear that they are pulses of energy, on, off, everywhere at once. The center of the universe is everywhere, existing and not existing. Arcana programs have the information fields that instruct source energy how to form. Antemedi once joked with me and said, all movement is an illusion. And he said, when you think that the universe is in pulse, on, off, incredibly fast, when I move my hand, he says, it's being reformed in a different position, billions of times in the swish of one hand. So they're very clear that they want to see this as pulses rather than as vibrating sine waves. In fact, when we think about light, it was then I understood how visible light is both a particle and a wave, because it forms in pulses in different positions. So it can be both. So I'd not gone far enough. And have you ever wondered why alien spacecraft don't make sonic booms? Well, first of all, they don't have heat shields. What they do is they change the information program of the atmosphere. So as the craft goes into the atmosphere doesn't exist because the program of it has been changed. I mean, even now, the military are working out, wondering how spacecraft can go underwater. They can see these craft go underwater and travel at 300 or 400 miles an hour, but they're just astonished as to how they can do it. So there's this explanation of how they can do that. The nature of our mind, soul, and universe are therefore intrinsically linked because we are source. Even our humanoid intellect and feelings are part of a program. We might use the word universal consciousness, but that kind of imbues it with a sense of benevolence, of good and bad. But the whole system never existed as good or bad, and it's not good or bad. There are benevolence, and those are the choices made within the process of grow. We process information through what we already know, whereas many benevolents allow information to present itself. See, their minds are much more pliable, much more fluid, because their sense of self has dissipated. They do live in individuality, but because they see that they are the universe, and the universe is information, it's information and energy, they see that they are the information of the universe. Therefore, the way in which they process information is very different to us. Our subconscious takes part in our decisions, and it judges through feelings and prejudices. It contains thoughts such as it's good to move away from pain, which I've already spoken about, and fear will stop us from getting into danger, when in reality it stops us from seeing what's there, and we act out our fears, and these become our drivers and part of our motivation. So we're very different in our understandings to benevolent aliens. So our understanding of them, we're using through our current database. So we're looking through what we already know rather than allowing the information to present itself. We might think it's always good to overcome, to strive and succeed. No, we don't. We don't have anything to overcome. And why should we see problems in order to overcome them? We then see problems when they don't exist. So what is to succeed? To move from a lower state of being? But when's enough? Enough. Because we repeat these cycles like a dopamine fix, like hamsters in a wheel. Within duality, we have fears of not succeeding and find fear of failure. If we build on the same foundations, we might have a different building, but it will still have the same attributes. We're using the same data in the data bag, and that's what's slowing us down. We really tightly hold on to what we believe we are. But we are more than our subconscious tells us and who we currently believe we are. It's a challenging statement, and it requires a little bit of introspection. The work of enlightenment enables us to look at our unconscious thoughts and what they do to us. The energy that we create, because we are creator in that form, is literally us in the universe. So our energy that we create, the things we do, exists in the universe. Our created energy formulates our timelines and returns to us in experiences. And those experiences allow us to see what we have created. So we create and then we experience what we have created. We might not think that our timelines are bringing us what we have created, but they are bringing us the experience of the sponsoring thoughts behind the reasons why we created it. So we experience ourselves in the universe. By contrast, the Andromedans have a sense of community self. And as individuals, they live within that. When I've experienced their worlds, I have a huge sense of being loved unconditionally, as if I was the most loved person in the world. And it's a wonderful place to be. In one seminar on love, I was encouraged to speak about our perspective. I spoke about how we trade love, how we give love to somebody in the expectation that they are going to give us love back. Sometimes we can want love from people because we don't love ourselves enough, and we can manipulate love. And they found that quite extraordinary when you consider what unconditional love is. It has no conditions on it at all, whereas we tend to put conditions on ours. Antemedi is not constrained by time. He can see the next moment and what will happen. Because he entwines with non-self, he is at one with the information on his timeline. He sees in advance the reasons why the next events unfold. He knows what will unfold, and he says it's a sumptuous way in which to live. I'm not saying that we should live like that. We're a long way away from that. I mean, we're just about able to process and understand why we're doing the things that we are doing once we've done them. What they do to us. But makes you wonder what life will show us when we live life with unconstrained love. Perhaps a greater sense of freedom from self and what that means. But we're then involved with fear of loss of self. And loss of self keeps us to who we are. It's one of the default programs. It's one of our subconscious protection programs. And the drivers in our mind give us our rationale for life. Feelings tell us how we should be. And we try to show the world what we are, whilst we sometimes believe we're very different. However, if we learn to let go of self, it allows a greater peacefulness. There's no striving to be something. We are what we are, and we're not to be judged. This is living closer to just is, and the ways of Antemedi and Orlacka. It's still bound by our duality. The isness they describe as the entirety of Source and the Arcana programs with soul, with the dimensions of the multidimensional soul. And it just is. It needs nothing to complement itself. And just is, the state of being or existence, is the experience of the isness. Orlacka, showed you earlier, doesn't move from one state of being to another. And it might seem unusual to us. It might seem like a muted experience. But we have to remember our desires are created within our duality and our experiences. So how can we judge what her life might be like or how full it is? We still view from our past data and sense of self. We're very constrained in our views. Here's some of our feelings. Compassion. It's a very human feeling. We feel someone suffering. We allow in that pain and we have empathy for them. This is our way to understand their predicament. Orlacka says she doesn't have compassion like us. Why should she change her state of being of bliss that just is? Would changing her feeling help the person who is injured? No. Feeling somebody else's pain and making yourself painful doesn't ultimately help them. Now, our compassion is a touching moment in a duality of a sympathy, and it does help, and it shows them that we care. But she says she would far prefer to show us the reasons why we create our pain rather than feeling sympathy in the way that we do, or compassion in the way that we do. It seems callous to us, but when she explains it in that way, we can have our eyes opened to our current way of being. And we know that we are responsible for our experiences, and this is what they tell us. This is what all religion has told us in the past, and all wisdom, that we are responsible for our experiences. But with us, when it's mixed in duality, Davis saw put things right was a thought put in our collective consciousness to manipulate us. We accepted it, and in that way, we gave away some of our power and control. But that's deciding if self-responsibility is hard or easy. Perhaps that depends on whether we wish to see it as an achievement in adversity. And if we do, we'll then see adversity all around us, even when it doesn't exist. Adversity, quite simply, is judgment through fear, when love and understanding could have been used instead. At every turn, we're faced by who we are and what we think. The world reflects us because our thoughts and beliefs create the world around us. Change what we believe and we create a different world. When we see we're looking at ourselves in a mirror, we can walk through into different worlds. And you're having many experiences in the moment of now. Letting go of the importance of self enables our vibration to change, and it helps with the transition to fifth density, which is coming at some stage. But there comes a point when we no longer let go of letting go, or we actually let go of letting go, sorry. See, enlightenment might seem important, but to say enlightenment is important is a valuation and a judgment. When Orlacka would say she seeks not enlightenment, if she were to seek enlightenment, that would mean she was not enlightened or not good enough. Whereas she does not see if she's good enough or not good enough. She just lives as just is, without the need to seek to better herself. If she finds a different way of being, she might adopt that way of being, but she doesn't see that she's not good enough in order to improve herself. So therefore she cannot be improved. Improvement just has no meaning, not within the love of self, the unconditional love. It's a state of being, and that's what she chooses to live in. So there's a big difference between the way that some of these benevolents think and process information and the way that we think and process information. So I think that's probably about where I've got it. I'm happy to take more questions of Antemedi or Orlacka. If anybody has got any questions, then I'd be happy to hear them. Just wondering what screen to leave up.
Yeah, I do. I personally, just to start off, I struggle a little bit with following the language a little. I can understand that. Yeah, I think by the way we attend to the world, we change what comes into existence for us. I think that's one point. I can say that. We can attend to the world in different ways. I think that's partly what you're saying. These Andromedans, they've been created for the same processes that we've been created. Ultimately, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. But are you saying that, or are they saying that we are on a sort of similar trajectory through history, if you like, or do we have our individual directions? I wasn't clear about that. Are they trying to indicate to us which way to go? I don't. Was that too difficult?
No, so I'm just wondering where to start. The place to start, of course, would be in the beginning, but there is no beginning in the way that you understand it. I have talked of an origin, but you see, the beginning begins again and again. Everything is in pulse. When souls were created, the universal soul existed. The universal soul expressed itself into entities. Entities included some of the living planets and other life forms as well. Soul also has a non-self existence. In terms of non-self soul, as being a program, you are a program and a program of self. A program is a very difficult word for you to accept because it challenges the sense of self. Sorry, I just lost it. But soul then expresses into self. But there are multi-dimensional levels of you in the moment of now. It's difficult to conceptualize soul, but if I were to say to you, imagine a sphere, and within that sphere, there were dots of light, that you could put your focus into one of those dots of light, that there would be perhaps thousands of those dots of light. And each one of those dots of light would be an experience. It could be a past life experience on Earth. It could be a future experience on Earth. It could be an experience on another planet in another form. But your soul, which encompasses all this, is still you. The energy of your soul moves through all of these experiences at the same time. You are looking through a separation program at soul and superimpose separation on soul, whereas at other levels, it is a comprehensive system of self and non-self. When I use the word program, arcana program, as I say, this is a difficult, I have difficulty with your language, because if I were to use a word that would be in my language that would encompass this better, it would have no meaning for you because you would not know the word, you would not know the concept. Indeed, I know I am going off transit, but just to show as an example, when Robert is writing my words, typing them, and I am showing him different dimensions and different concepts, he can type and write them because the vibration at that particular moment that he is imbued with is part in mine, and he can understand the information at that particular dimensional vibration. But often when he rereads what he has written, he cannot understand it. And I have to reprocess that information with him in order that he can understand it. So these are perhaps new concepts to you. Take, for example, people would refer to Saint Michael or Michael of the Blue Ray as a deity, that they may have an interaction with him. In the same way that your higher selves also have interactions with you and other aspects of yourself. So someone could speak with Saint Michael, Michael of the Blue Ray, and they would have a personal interaction with him. But if his focus was not on that individual, he would not be aware that he was having an interaction with that individual, even though he was. It's a question as to where his focus is. Sorry, I've gone completely off piste with him I don't know if that, because it's such a big subject.
Yeah, language isn't really adequate almost to express it, is it?
Is there still something about your question that hasn't?
I struggle following the dialogue. I have to say, I have to confess. I can get parts of it, but I do struggle with it. Yeah, and maybe just the limitation of the language. I'll just let me pass on to. Does anybody else have a question? Yeah, Graham.
Hello, a couple of points. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Yes.
Yes, Graham.
A while ago at one of the Mile End meetings, we had a dowsing exercise for where we came from before we were born. And we had 3 choices. One was being like in this world. The second was being an extraterrestrial, which sounds like what you are. And the third was from the angelic realm. Have you heard something similar to that?
This is to say, some people, when they look to the stars, they look and say, am I Pleiadian? Am I Andromedan? Am I Syrian? In essence, the human DNA was forged from 23 different alien species. And at one stage, it had 12 strands of DNA. And as humans, you were capable of many things. There are many aspects to the soul and to the universal soul. It's all very well saying I am from the Pleiades or I am from the Andromedans, but in essence, your soul is having many, many experiences in many different lifetimes.
Mm.
So it's very difficult to say which one you are, because you are all of them. And there will have been times when you have had soul experiences in a disembodied way, so that you would just be the experience, perhaps experiencing a planet, being in touch with all of the life forms that are on there and experiencing them as if they are an extension of you. This might seem like a godlike expression, but we, of course, are creators in that way. So you are many things. And as to when, it depends on whether one is looking in time or outside of time, because time of itself is a program. It's a program to make sense of things or to have things in a linear way so that they have experience of purpose. Sorry, I don't know if that's answered it.
Yes, that's so. It's a lot more complicated, it seems. The other point was I studied the works of a Arab philosopher who was born in the 12th century, and the way he talked about how revelation works, that it comes from source, is revealed, and then returns like moment by moment. So that's exactly how you were talking about it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's soul energy. You know, it all returns back to source because it pulses. It's here. It can only be as origin, and our souls can only be as origin, here and not here, existing and not existing, in a paradox. And even our own duality and our experience is the extension of the paradox of that. So as you say, we have the burst of energy, the experiences as the energy joins together in these programs, but the energy returns to source. But it's probably quite useful to remember that not only is source everywhere, but we are source itself. You know, there are tools that one can use when working with source energy or pulse can be used to create other energies, other dimensions, other planes according to the programs. But there are ways of constructing things so that one can have concepts. You can see source energy pouring through your crown chakra, or you could see it emanating from your heart. These are ways to create with source, because you are creators. You are making things up. Everything in the world is made up. Everything in the universe is made up.
Is source just consciousness, really? And consciousness is the bottom of everything, and we even physical entities are just forms of consciousness, really. Is it not? Is that what source is? Consciousness, pure consciousness.
Correct, but consciousness has a degree of benevolence attached to it, certainly when it's seen through self. If you see the shining blackness as source energy, impulse, on, off, everywhere in the universe, so source is everywhere. It contains unfathomable energy, the ability to grow as it was, because it came from grow energy, so it can never not exist. It is inextinguishable and inexhaustible because it is continuing to grow and continuing to create. In terms of consciousness, which runs in parallel, which is part of source energy, consciousness is many things. There is the programs of the dimensions. We could see these perhaps as information fields, so that the information means that a stone, for example, is being recreated in the next microsecond in exactly the same spot that it was before, because that's what the information tells it. But in essence, even that stone is not, because it's moving at so many thousand miles per second through the universe as the Earth travels around in the solar system in any event. So consciousness is at the heart of the universe. It is everything, and it precedes even physical form, because this physical form that you inhabit, that Robert inhabits, is just information and energy. That's all it is. It's information and energy in pulse. But it depends on what value you place upon consciousness. And whilst I explained the difference between awareness and consciousness, that consciousness was something, it required interaction from one thing to another, there are programs of the universe that run and just run without the need to be aware. So, for example, as I spoke about Michael of the Blue Ray, the same would apply to your higher self, your higher consciousness. Your higher consciousness is also a program that you interact with, but your higher self is also on a different dimension, having an experience of its own. So you can see these lines between consciousness and our ideas of self become very blurred, but it is the choice within Grow, the choice to choose benevolence, that allows us benevolence.
Well, isn't the yeah, okay. Is the consciousness though not creating more complexity? And if you like higher consciousness, and what is the purpose of that? Why would that happen? Is it that the consciousness is creating beings that can loop back so it can appreciate itself? What's the driving? There seems to be a driving throughout the universe. It's sort of driving it. It seems to
the primary origin is the driver.
Yeah, but what? Yeah, and why would that be?
Well, it never had any never had the awareness that came about from Grow. And that is the prime driving force, Grow.
To what end? And why would it do that? Or what?
because there was no choice. It was just something formed as grow, and we are the expression of grow, and we have the ability to choose what to grow into.
Yeah. Okay.
Within source, there exists origin, in part because there are all possibilities and no possibilities within that paradox as it pulses into existence, and it doesn't exist at the same time. So within those pulses, there is all potential, all possibility, but not is all probable. The probabilities come about from the consciousness programs, if we can perhaps use those words, which relate to the next probable outcome. So when you think something differently, you can change it in an instant just by thinking differently. Sorry, I'm not sure if that has answered it correctly.
Well, it's sort of so attention creates the world, the way you attend to it. But to do that, you need life, because life can operate with attention. So you need increasing complexity of life to create increasing change. I'm going with this.
Are you saying that? Why are things so?
Yeah, I'm just wondering. Seems to be a creative drive in the universe. It doesn't. It's not. There seems to be a. If the universe was just inanimate matter bumping together, how could I mean, it seems to be it takes a miracle to have created the world we live in today with the beauty and the art, the literature, whatever. I mean, that's Whereas, but if the fundamental is consciousness, right, and that's the driving force, then it seems to me a better way of understanding why we are where we are today.
You think you've answered your own question?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No.
It's a great way. I'm just bouncing things off
by processing it.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Is anybody else like to ask a question?
I mean, there are different densities and different dimensions, which all have different ways of being. So, for example, on these large biospheres that the Andromedans have, and these are grown, these huge things that they can move about in galaxies. And walking around, I've shown a path once where the plants had their own vibrations. Everything does have its own vibration. Even Dr. Bach looked at the vibration of plants and created Bach remedies, and Dowsers vibrations as well. But on this particular walk, it was a walkway set out with plants, different plants. And as you walk past the plants, they were all making a different vibration. So it was like walking through a melody as you were walking down the path. So there are some quite extraordinary things in different worlds of different ways of existing and being. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. If there's no other questions, no. But thank you, Robert. That's given us lots to think about.
I'm sorry I caused so much brain ache. It's a really simple subject, but it's also really complicated at the same time, because I think we try to understand it, but I mean, some extraordinary memories that have come back, past life memories on this planet.
Yeah.
Where everybody else has probably had similar sorts of experiences.
Yes. Okay.
Very good. Well, thank you, Nick, for
Very
arranging.
well, thank you very much for your time, and I hope all present have enjoyed it. And
if anybody does want a free book, just go to my website. It's oops, I've lost it now. It's the books are available free.
that's great. Thank you.
You're
Thanks very much.
Enjoy your days.
Well, yes, I wish you best for the rest of the day, and with your, sorry, I call it a mission, but it's you have a path, a path you're following, aren't you? Really, to
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
okay, Nick.
Okay, all the best then.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.